Welcome to Highland Waves, a podcast originating from Marshbrook Studios, located beside the world-renowned Margaree River in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada. Highland Waves feature stories about the people, the places, and the visitors of Inverness County. I'm Pat Wall, your host, and this morning I'm pleased to have with me Jamie Taylor, an experienced immigration lawyer who lives, works, and when time permits, plays with her family near the river's edge in Margaree Valley. Jamie, welcome to Highland Waves.
Good morning, Pat. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You're a maritimer.
I am.
Born where?
I was a Blue Noser from the start. I was born in Halifax at the Grace Maternity Hospital.
Oh, okay. So tell me about your journey from there to law.
Oh, that's a great question. So I grew up on the mainland and went to high school there, and upon graduation, I went to Mount Allison University. At the time, it was considered the #1 undergraduate school in Canada. So despite my scholarships to McGill, I turned on my heel and found myself at Mount Allison University. So I was there for 4 years. I did a degree in Canadian Studies with a minor in political science. And after graduating, my sister had moved out west, like the early 2000s exodus of all maritimers to find employment. And my sister was always sending me jobs and opportunities, so I'd go out west with her. And I was the successful winner of a national internship at an organization that focused on ethical leadership. And that caught my attention, and I won the internship, and I moved out to Calgary. And that's what kept me busy out in Calgary. And long story short, I got into law school and I started my career out there.
Wonderful. I noticed in my research, during your undergraduate work, you studied peace studies. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that was more so after I graduated law school. I ran 2 programs at the University of Calgary between graduating undergrad and getting into law school. I ran something called the Consortium for Peace Studies and the Parhad programs. So that was funded privately by actually one of the med school professors who had a strong belief in peace studies. And so we actually ended up bringing in, I started the Peace Prize, that we had a huge ceremony out in Calgary and brought in the mayor of Hiroshima. And we actually hosted an event that I hosted at the Calgary Zoo. And so that was really a natural progression of my study of ethical leadership into identifying and recognizing leaders who had advanced causes of peace, such as the incredible mayor of Hiroshima.
You find that experience helped you in your law profession?
Yeah, I think so a lot. When you take the oath to become a lawyer, I remember sitting through many of the oath ceremonies. In Alberta, it's one of the last places you get an individual ceremony alone in the courtroom with a judge presiding over your matter of becoming a lawyer. In Nova Scotia, by contrast, when I got called to the bar here, it's a large ceremony, hundreds of lawyers becoming a lawyer at that moment. Again, so in my individual ceremony and my own and attending many others, you hear one of the things that they say is that you commit not to perverse the law. And I personally found when I worked at large firms, that was in fact exactly what you did. You perversed the law in favor of the outcome for the paying client. And frankly, often in the big firms, there's a lot of money involved and very sophisticated lawyers that would sort of twist the law to get the outcome that the client needed to get the maximum financial gain. And I was not comfortable with that, speaking frankly. And I think my focus on peace studies and ethical leadership naturally drove me to places at law where you really were truly focused on truth seeking and justice seeking, and not just the best outcome for the richest clients.
Very good. You've practiced in various fields of law, workplace law, privacy law, labor, and human rights law. Why focus on immigration law?
I sort of fell into immigration law, if I'm being honest. I actually sat on a board for a number of years out in Calgary called the United Nations Association of Calgary, again, driven by my interest in ethical leadership. And another one of the board members there was a lawyer about 5 years senior to me, and she became an informal mentor. And I was in labor law, employment law. She lost 2 lawyers who were moved on to other firms, and she phoned me and she said, Jamie, I'll teach you everything you need to know about immigration law if you just come and join me. And I said, well, I don't think so. I said, I want to have a family. Why don't you wait till I'm finished my maternity leaves? I want to have kids.
Yes.
And she said, no, Jamie, I'll support you through that. Just come and help me during kind of this precarious time in her practice. I said, well, I guess so. So I made the decision. I made that big leap. And I was very lucky to have mentorship from this woman who continues to be a leader in the field, and eventually, did a lot of self-study, a lot of guidance, a lot of mentorship, and very fortunate to be in an industry what's unique about immigration law is it's federally regulated. So it made it very easy for me to move from Calgary to Marguerite without having to reteach myself a whole new provincial regulations. And so I feel very fortunate to have fallen into immigration law the way that I did.
Wow, that's wonderful. It seems to me there are 3 main areas of immigration law. There's immigration, refugee, citizenship, and under each of those, of course, there's subheadings of temporary, permanent residency, students, etc. What is the most common in your practice?
Pat, you've done your research. For myself, I started more on the workplace side of immigration law, and then I've naturally found myself much more involved with individuals and supporting individuals. So I don't do any refugee law. That's just not an area that I was ever trained in, and I don't find myself practicing there. But mostly my focus is on permanent residence applications, citizenship, temporary foreign workers, and sort of all the associated things with that, visitor records. So if someone's coming and wants to stay and as a visitor, study permits. I do a lot of study permits. One of my anchor clients is actually an institution that I do a lot of study permits for.
Okay. There's permanent residency and citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Citizenship seems to me you attain citizenship, which means you are the same as a naturalized person who was born in Canada. Explain to me permanent residency. What's the difference there?
Sure. So permanent residence, I guess if you were to think about permanent residence as someone who doesn't have to renew their status. Once you become a permanent resident of Canada, you're permanent resident, you're eligible to live in Canada as long as you meet something called the residency requirements. And that means you just have to have been in Canada 2 years out of every 5 in order to renew your permanent resident card. So that card is something you put in your wallet and just allows you to come in and out of Canada as though you were a Canadian. The difference between a permanent resident and a citizen, Pat, is a permanent resident cannot run for government and you can't vote in our elections. But aside from that, you enjoy many of the same rights and privileges of a Canadian citizen. Now that's in contrast to like what you would call a temporary person, so a temporary foreign worker you might hear, or international students. Those individuals are here on a set term. So you have a work permit that starts and ends on a certain date, you're a temporary worker, or you're an international student, you have a study permit that makes you eligible to be here for a specific start and end date. Permanent residents, by contrast, don't have that end date. You are a permanent resident until you relinquish that status.
Okay. Now there are provincial and federal considerations in terms of immigration. How does that work?
How much time do we have, Pat? I'll give you a quicker...
A simple one.
Sure. I think that for the most part, like I mentioned, it's a federally regulated industry, which means the rules are the same across our country. However, each province, you're right, does have different programs. And I would say if I were to highlight a couple of things about our Atlantic provinces, is we have something, Sean Fraser was formerly the Minister of Immigration, and he introduced a program called the Atlantic Immigration Program. It used to be called the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, and it was recently made into a formal program. So call out to any worker or employers in Cape Breton or in the broader area who are crying for workers. Find out more about the Atlantic Immigration Program. It is actually a terrific economic program driven to support the Atlantic economy. And it's driven to help take away a lot of the red tape and paperwork required to bring in workers and actually to turn them into permanent residents. So it's a win-win. So under the Atlantic Immigration Program, it's less paperwork for employers to bring in workers, and you have the benefit of offering a pathway to permanent residency. And we talked about how permanent residency gets that longer term stay without needing to renew all the time. So it's really winning for people that are coming in, and it's winning for employers because it takes away a lot of the paperwork.
What a wonderful program it seems like.
Yeah, I can't emphasize it enough.
That's great. What about Indigenous people? Is there special requirements for those? Let's say that somebody in one of our border provinces where their territory stretches into Canada. Can they move freely, or do they have special requirements they must meet or have?
Sure. So they would be regulated under a different act than so we have the Citizenship Act and the Immigration Refugee, or we have the Immigration Act and Regulations. So, of course, I'm not a fan of the word Indian, but it is called the Indian Act. And so the Indian Act really, for the most part, does govern the movement of and other regulations of First Nations peoples. And that, in my practice, I've been practicing for 13 years, I've never had an issue with citizenship for First Nations individuals, but it can come into play, Pat. Let's say there was somebody whose parents were First Nations born in Canada, but they were, say, raised in Boston. They may have a claim to citizenship, but there is unique rules that would apply to First Nations. But it's quite complex, and to be honest, in all my years of practice, I haven't seen it.
Okay, thank you. Scanning the immigration documents, it seems to me it would be difficult for people coming into the country to understand these documents, and particularly if they don't speak English. Where do you stand on that in terms of, do you speak languages other than English?
Yeah, I speak English and French, although to be honest, this comes into play occasionally, but I've just found, first of all, to answer the question about the confusion of documents, I often joke that Canadian immigration website keeps me in business because it's so confusing. I think people can get overwhelmed. I myself find you can get yourself into a loop on that website because it's constantly changing. I do think I'm sensitive to language requirements, but many immigrants that are coming, especially through economic programs, do have a minimum language requirement, meaning they have a certain level of English in order to qualify for programs, making it the case that for the most part, I haven't had any issues communicating with my clients.
What is the biggest and most common challenge for you and your clients?
Confusion. Confusion is probably, I mean, Pat, how many times have you been at a table, oh, my cousin got this, or my boyfriend's mother got this, and oh no, you can't do that. So what I think misinformation and confusion is probably one of the biggest roadblocks that I face, especially when someone comes to me and says, but my cousin did this, I need to be able to do this. And the truth is, not only is immigration law a moving target in the sense that the policies literally change daily, but no case is a one-size-fits-all. No application type is one-size-fits-all. So in my opinion, people, while they can do their own immigration applications, and many do successfully, it really is a customized area of law where individuals need to find out what rules apply to them and what applied to their brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle just may not work for them. So for me, that's something, and you have to gain trust with people, because people, I think, can naturally be suspicious of lawyers, and they may think, oh, it's a money grab. They just don't want to tell me this works for me because they want me to spend more money. And I can honestly say, at least for me personally as a lawyer, I'm not driven by money. If I wanted to just make the maximum dollars, I would have stayed in Calgary and just kept working at the big firms. So it's often the case that I'll take longer with my clients to explain something, because I want people to truly know that what programs they do qualify for, and that That unfortunately, just because I worked for brother, sister, whomever, that there may be an adjustment required to work for them.
Well, thank you for that, because now I know I'm not the only one that gets confused over all of this.
Yeah, it is not straightforward.
Yeah. What is the easiest route for someone outside of our country to come here?
That's a great question, Pat. I actually just made a TikTok on that this week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so if anybody were to ask me what's the easiest way to get a work permit in Canada, this is what I would say to them. Est-ce que tu parles en français? I would say, do you speak French? Because if you speak French, there's a wonderful program called the Francophone Mobility Program. As long as you're wanting to settle outside of the province of Quebec, you have an intermediate level of French, and you otherwise qualify for a work permit, meaning you don't have a serious medical condition or criminal background that would prevent you from being admitted entry. If you have that mid-level of French, it opens up a whole host of doors under the Francophone Mobility Program. So any French speakers listening outside of Canada, if you want to come to Canada, look into that Francophone Mobility Program, because the government is really emphasizing building French communities outside of Quebec, because of course French is our second official language. And so that, I would say, at least today, is the easiest way, second only to marrying a Canadian.
Okay.
but I never encourage a marriage for immigration reasons. So if you just if you haven't fallen in love with one of us adorable Canadians, then I suggest that you touch up your French skills.
Okay. We have over, I think, 100,000 people enter Canada illegally every year. Do you represent those people as well?
Sure. I've had people come to me who have overstayed their status, either are currently overstayed or have, or who have, various circumstances have overstayed. But I don't represent refugees, which I think I should distinguish the two. So entering Canada, for example, at a land border on a matter, seeking refugee status, that is not an area of law I practice. Okay. But where I can help people is if they've had an overstay and are trying to reconcile that overstay. And I've certainly represented people in those circumstances, as long as they aren't trying to seek refugee status following that overstay.
In general, what are the most common reasons applications are rejected?
Money and lack of ties to home country. So for the most part, people can make the mistake when they make an application to enter Canada for various reasons, especially the temporary categories like a worker, student, or visitor. People think, well, I want to prove my love and commitment to Canada. I want to show, I own property here, I have taxes. All these things are trying to show how committed they are to Canada, when in reality, what the reviewing officer is looking for in those temporary applications is that they think you're going to leave. Because they are by nature a temporary application. And so again, I'm talking about visitor, study, and workers. So again, you want to demonstrate what's called temporary intent on those temporary applications. That is, I have a plan to leave. And two, you need to show that you have sufficient funds to support yourself so that you won't be drawing from any of our public, we have a social welfare system, and the
Yes.
government wants to be satisfied that you aren't going to be drawing on that system during your stay.
Sure. People applying from various countries, of course, pose different challenges. And has there been any uptick or downturn in applications, for example, lately over the Indian fiasco that has happened with the situation in Toronto?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's certainly been a lot of controversy over the situation, and there are certainly stark opinions on both sides of that. But they have withdrawn several. I think I read yesterday in the teens, I want to say 16 diplomats were removed from India, Canadian diplomats. And so immigration is political. And there's no question about that. Immigration is a political tool that is used as a leverage. And so it would not surprise me. I have a permanent resident application pending for an individual who's an Indian passport holder, and I've just been kind of cringing at the situation selfishly. I mean, there's so many other things at play, but just for my own practice, realizing that there's a very good chance that this processing is going to go into a stall pattern. And so that's really what I anticipate, Pat. If all of these are slowing to a halt, then any applications that are in the queue are just not going to get processed. So people are going to have consequences of their immigration that will have to be dealt with.
Do you help people emigrate?
You mean leave Canada?
Yes.
No, I only deal with inbound to Canada issues. So if somebody needs to go to the United States or any other country, I would have, I have a host of referrals I would provide for people. I can help people to relinquish their Canadian citizenship, because even though you're not necessarily coming inbound, you are kind of dealing with the Canadian immigration system. But again, that's something in my practice I've never seen. I know how to do it, but no one's ever wanted to give up being Canadian. And
oh, that's great. Besides directing people to your website, Navigate Canada.
Yeah, that's navigatecanadalaw.ca.
Okay. What is the first simple advice you can give to somebody listening who wants to get into Canada and stay here?
That's a tough question. I mean, I have a TikTok that has a lot of free advice. It really depends what area of law that you want to. So my TikTok is at Navigate Canada Law. My website's navigatecanadalaw.ca, but the government itself actually has a free guide online for every type of application. So if there's a type of application that you're thinking about, like you want to become an international student or you want to become a worker, go and read the free guide. Try to figure out if you can qualify, and every single guide will say eligibility requirements. Go to that section, control find on your computer under the eligibility requirements section, and see if you can fit into the eligibility requirements. And if you're confused, which you might be, then you might consider getting a consultation with, a lawyer or a consultant or an agent. Many countries have like an immigration agent, they're called. So
there are immigration consultants as well, besides lawyers.
That's right. So Canadian immigration law is unique in that it's actually one of the only areas of law that non-lawyers can practice. It is a controversial topic, a political topic, and in my opinion is that I've worked with some tremendous consultants in my life, and I've become aware or had to pick up the pieces from situations where there was ill-intended and selfish consultants. But that's true in law too. Mm-hmm. Like there's good and bad, and
true everywhere.
That's right. So it's a hot topic amongst lawyers. I don't have a strong opinion on it because I've worked with many wonderful consultants.
All of what you do it from your home in the Margaret Valley.
That's true.
Has your location hindered your practice at all?
Well, when I first moved here, I continued to work on a contract with a Calgary law firm. So I was doing remote law before it was cool because COVID hadn't happened yet. So when COVID happened, my family and I kind of joked like, oh, we're ready for this. We're all set up for this because we had been doing it. I was very fortunate to have my former employer in Calgary allowed me to do that. And I just had everything set up from home. So really there wasn't a big shift. But in 2022, I actually left that firm and started my own firm exclusively. And that's gotten, I guess in many ways, I had more confidence doing that post-COVID because you need to do things like network in the world. And so I've been grateful that I've been able to network now post-COVID with many other lawyers on Cape Breton. Okay. So as far as I know, I'm the only immigration lawyer on Cape Breton that is exclusively focused on immigration. And I may be wrong, but I'm actually not even aware of another lawyer that practices immigration on Cape Breton. Okay. So other lawyers refer work to me safely because I'm not going to compete with them. I'm not going to steal their clients, yes, right? Yeah. I'm not going to take their real estate work, their contracts, their commercial transactions. They can safely refer immigration work to me, and I can refer work back to them. So in that way, I'm kind of like I'm the Sweden safe of lawyers. Yeah.
What about internet and cell service? Is that a handicap?
If anybody from the government is listening to this, Marguerite would really love some cell service. So I've been here 5 years, and we don't have cell service where we live in Margaret Valley. I often joke we live in the Bermuda Triangle because there are very few things that just generally work in the area. But we haven't left. So no, we recently invested in Starlink internet, which has been a game changer for immigration law. You have to upload and download a lot of files because you're submitting applications on behalf of clients, and it's all done through a lot of new portals. So having that Starlink upload and download speed has been a tremendous help to my practice.
Well, that's good to know because I'm in the market for changing my service as well.
Yeah, I actually talked to other people in the area who work for the federal government who strongly recommended it. And if anything, I just wish I'd done it sooner.
How do you market yourself?
Through my website, navigatecanada.ca. TikTok has recently taken off. I was sort of a late joiner. I just started in March of this year, but I've had several viral-ish videos. Like one in particular has gone over 200,000 views, and I'm starting to. I've just since March built out over 2,000 followers and growing every day. So a great place for free advice for anybody listening. But it is still Cape Breton Pat, so word of mouth. Treat people with respect that come to you, and they keep coming and referring their friends.
Do you provide other services besides immigration law?
I can notarize documents, and I do offer a mobile notary service. So I know there are many seniors in our community, so I do offer, drive to you, notarize your documents, that kind of thing. And but other than that, I am immigration focused.
Okay. You've got a husband and 3 children. You're a participator in your community in various aspects of it. How have you been accepted in your community?
I think having a family does make that easier. I'm an extrovert by nature. I've done a lot of volunteering. I've volunteered with the Cape Breton Local Immigration Partnership, volunteer at our community school. I'm on a board of directors for the community center. I think life is like a bank account, Pat. It's really about investment and then some withdrawals when you need it. And so I've felt very positive connection in the community. But it's like anything, you have to give to receive, and I don't give to receive. I don't mean it in that sense, but just in the sense that you get out of life what you're putting in. And I've been very fortunate. When we moved here, I wondered if I would ever make friends. I just didn't know what it would be like. And I have met some people that I can't imagine my life without now, some true best friends. So I feel very lucky to have Marguerite.
Well, that's very nice to hear. What advice do you have for a young family wishing to live and work in a rural community?
I mean, I think having the tools, doing a little research about the tools that you're going to need to succeed. So for us, I wish I had tackled that internet issue a little sooner. So, for example, if you're going to need certain farming tools to have a successful farm in Marguerite, you may not be able to go to the local farming store on Sunday afternoon to pick up your equipment. There's a limit to the services here. So I think having a plan in advance is good, doing a little investigating, because it is a remote rural community, so you can't just run to Superstore, or you can't just run to anywhere, frankly. And we are gaining more communities. Marguerite Castle just opened. We are gaining more resources, but I think like anything, you do have to be organized, and you have to have a plan to succeed in Marguerite. Or on the contrary, just be very laissez-faire. Like if you're just not worried and you're very relaxed, then this is a great place too.
Good advice. Before we finish, is there anything you would like to add?
I think, thankful for an opportunity to chat to you, and no real additions aside from if there are, you hear a lot in Cape Breton about employers that are seeking talent and workers. Look into the Atlantic Immigration Program. It is a customized program for employers in Nova Scotia and all the Atlantic provinces. So don't be intimidated by immigration. I think there are ways it can serve. It's a two-way street. I think we can build wonderful communities by welcoming newcomers. And that would be my next and sort of final thought, is that Cape Breton can be so friendly, but don't forget to be welcoming. So there's a difference. So not just being friendly to newcomers that you might be meeting in our communities, but be welcoming, maybe invite them for a cup of tea or ask to see if somebody would like to go to a walk. We are seeing more and more newcomers to our communities, so I would just maybe challenge everybody to do a welcoming act to help really make newcomers to feel a part of the community, and not to underestimate that friendly hello, but sometimes taking it that one step further can be the world of difference to a newcomer to Canada.
Well, diversity helps us all.
I couldn't agree more, Pat.
Okay. Thank you for everything, and for coming to shine a little light on the various aspects of your profession, immigration law, a profession that practically governs who enters Canada and how long they can stay. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow us to go on a little more about it, but I wish you all of the best and continued success in your profession. And I feel we're fortunate to have you here in Margaree. And thank you to our listeners. And a reminder to hit the like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date. The thought for today: a simple way to take measure of a country is to look at how many want in and how many want out. So long for now, Pat.